Picture this. It's a Sunday afternoon. Mom has been home all day. She fed the baby breakfast, played on the mat with her for an hour, read the same board book 4 times, rocked her through a difficult nap. She has given this baby her entire day. And then Dad walks in from a 2-hour trip to the hardware store. And the baby, this baby who has been perfectly content, perfectly happy, perfectly attended to all morning, sees his face. And completely transforms. Arms out. Body leaning forward. A sound that is somewhere between delight and desperation. She doesn't want the toy she's been chewing. She doesn't want the snack Mom is offering. She doesn't want Mom at all, actually, if we're being honest about it. She wants him. And Mom, who has given everything, who hasn't sat down, who skipped her own lunch, watches this happen. And feels something she wasn't expecting to feel. Something she might feel guilty about feeling. A sting. Now let's flip it completely. Different family. Different baby. Baby boy this time. Dad has been the one home all day. He has done all of it, every feed, every nappy, every attempt at a nap that took 45 minutes to get down and lasted 22. He has been present, patient, and completely exhausted. And then Mom gets home from work. And the baby boy, who has been perfectly fine, who was laughing at Dad 5 minutes ago, hears her voice from the hallway. And everything stops. He doesn't care about the toy. He doesn't care about the game they were playing. He reaches past Dad, past everything, toward the sound of her, like she is the only fixed point in the universe. And Dad stands there. Doing the maths in his head. Counting the hours he put in today. And feeling, quietly, invisibly, like none of it counted. If either of those scenes just played out in your own memory, if you recognized yourself in one of those parents, I need you to stay with me for this entire video. Because what I'm going to share with you today is not parenting opinion. It is not someone's theory. It is decades of peer-reviewed developmental science that explains, clearly and completely, why this happens. Why baby girls so often light up for their dads. Why baby boys so often cannot be soothed by anyone but their mums. And why, and this is the part that changes everything, it has nothing to do with who is the better parent, who loves the baby more, or who is doing something wrong. It has everything to do with your baby's biology. And by the time this video is finished, you will understand your baby, your partner, and yourself in a way you simply didn't before. Let's go deep. Before we can talk about parent preference, we need to talk about attachment. Because most people think they understand attachment. And most people are at least partially wrong. Here is the common version most people carry: baby bonds with caregiver. Caregiver provides food, warmth, comfort. Baby feels safe. Bond forms. That is true. But it is incomplete. And the part it misses is the part that explains everything we are going to talk about today. The modern science of attachment begins with a British psychiatrist named John Bowlby. In the 1950s and 60s, Bowlby spent years studying children who had been separated from their families, orphans, children evacuated during the war, children hospitalized for long periods without their parents. And he noticed something that nobody had ever systematically documented before. These children didn't just miss their caregivers the way you might miss a favorite toy or a familiar place. They grieved. They became physically unwell. They stopped developing. They showed signs of profound psychological distress that could not be explained by hunger, or cold, or any physical discomfort alone. Bowlby concluded that the human infant's need for a primary caregiver, a specific, known, consistently responsive adult, was not a preference or a habit or a learned behavior. It was a biological drive. As fundamental and as urgent, he argued, as the drive for food or warmth. He called his framework attachment theory. And at its center was a concept that seems simple but is actually quite revolutionary: the idea of the safe base. A safe base is not simply a person your baby loves. It is a person whose presence gives your baby's nervous system permission to function. Permission to explore. To take risks. To feel things fully. To be, in the most complete sense, a developing human being. Here is the analogy I want you to hold on to for the rest of this video, because it will make everything else make sense. Imagine a small child at a playground. There is a trusted adult, a parent, a grandparent, someone known, sitting on a bench nearby. That child will roam. They will climb things they probably shouldn't. They will engage with strangers, fall over, pick themselves up, and try again. They are brave. Not because they are naturally fearless, but because the bench exists. The safe base is there. And as long as they can see it, or know they can return to it if something goes wrong, they can be adventurous. Now take the adult away. Or replace that adult with a stranger. The child shrinks. The exploration stops. The same playground. The same equipment. The same child, behaving completely differently. Because the safe base is gone, and without it, the world becomes too uncertain to navigate. Your baby is doing the same thing. Every single day. In every room of your home. The only difference is that the stakes feel higher, because the baby's nervous system is so much more fragile, and so much more dependent on external support to stay regulated. Now here is the piece that most parenting books don't explain clearly enough. Bowlby did not believe babies attach to their parents as a single unit. He believed babies develop what he called an attachment hierarchy, a ranked, ordered, neurologically encoded list of people, each of whom serves a distinct and specific emotional function in the baby's life. At the top of that hierarchy is the primary attachment figure. This is the person the baby turns to when frightened, hurt, overwhelmed, or in need of deep regulation. The person whose absence triggers the most acute distress. The person who is, in the most neurobiological sense of the word, home. Further down the hierarchy, not less important, but differently important, are secondary attachment figures. People who are trusted and loved and sought, but for different purposes. For play. For novelty. For stimulation and surprise and the particular kind of joy that comes from someone who engages with the world differently. And here is where the research gets specific and, frankly, extraordinary. The role each parent plays in that hierarchy is not assigned randomly. It is not determined purely by who spends more time with the baby, or who does more of the caregiving work. It is shaped by something deeper. Something the parents don't consciously choose and the baby doesn't consciously decide. It is significantly shaped by the sex of the baby. Let's spend some real time on baby girls and their fathers. Because this dynamic is more nuanced than it appears on the surface, and it is also, I would argue, one of the most genuinely beautiful things developmental science has ever described. From the earliest weeks of life, something consistent and fascinating happens when fathers interact with their baby daughters. Researchers began noticing it in observational studies in the 1970s. They noticed it again and again, across different countries, different cultures, different family structures, different parenting styles. Baby girls pay close, sustained, and intense attention to their fathers. More, in many studies, than their brothers do at the same age. At first, researchers assumed this was simply about recognition. Girls recognize dad, they like familiar faces. But the more deeply they studied the interaction, the clearer it became that recognition was only one small part of a much larger story. Developmental psychologist Ross Park, at the University of California, spent decades examining how fathers interact with their infants compared to mothers. What he found confirmed what many parents already sense intuitively but have never had language for. Fathers play differently. They are more physical. More unpredictable. More likely to swoop, toss, tickle, make sudden sounds, introduce unexpected movement, shift from calm to exciting and back again within seconds. More likely to create what researchers technically call moderate arousal states, which is the scientific way of saying that dad creates experiences that are just slightly too much, that push the baby just past their comfort zone, and then resolve safely. Over and over again. And baby girls, Park found, respond to this specific kind of interaction with particular intensity. Their attention is sharper. Their positive emotional response is stronger. Their desire to re-engage, once the game pauses, is more active and more persistent. Now, why? What is it about a baby girl's developing brain that makes her so specifically drawn to this kind of experience? Part of the answer is neurological. Research from Cambridge University, and replicated across multiple studies since, has found that baby girls show, on average, earlier development in the areas of the brain responsible for social processing, facial recognition, and emotional responsiveness. In the first 12 months of life, baby girls are often more socially attuned than boys of the same age. More responsive to faces. More sensitive to shifts in vocal tone. More able to process the complex, fast-moving social information that a human interaction contains. What this means practically is that baby girls are, from very early in their lives, acutely sensitive to the difference between their parents. They detect, at a level their conscious mind cannot name, that mom and dad are distinct experiences. Distinct emotional environments. Distinct neurological inputs. And the distinctness of dad, his novelty, his unpredictability, his different voice and smell and energy and way of moving through the world, is, for a baby girl's rapidly developing social brain, not just pleasant. It is compelling. It is actively stimulating the parts of her brain that are most hungry for input right now. She is not choosing dad over mom. She is following her neurology toward the stimulus that best matches her current developmental appetite. And there is a second layer to this that is rarely discussed, even in parenting spaces that try to go deep. John Gottman, whose research on family relationships is some of the most cited in the field, found that fathers tend to interact differently with their daughters than with their sons in ways that extend far beyond physical play. With baby girls, fathers are, on average, more verbally engaged. More likely to make sustained eye contact. More likely to name things, narrate what's happening, use a wider emotional vocabulary, and speak to their daughters as though they are already capable of understanding more than they technically should be at this age. Baby girls, who are neurologically primed to process precisely this kind of rich, socially complex interaction, respond to it with something that looks, from the outside, like preference. But is actually recognition. The baby girl is recognizing the quality of attention her father is giving her and reaching toward it. There is also research from the University of Arizona that adds a long-term dimension to all of this. Fathers who were more emotionally expressive and verbally engaged with their baby daughters in the first year of life produced daughters who showed significantly stronger emotional regulation skills at age 5. The father's way of engaging with his baby girl is not just nice to watch. It is literally constructing the architecture of her emotional intelligence. So when your baby girl reaches past you, Mom, when she lights up for the man who just walked through the door after 2 hours away, what you are watching is not rejection. What you are watching is your daughter's developing brain doing its job. Seeking the specific kind of input it needs to grow the parts of itself that are ready to grow right now. She is, in the truest sense, becoming herself. And in this moment, she needs her father to do it. But I want to make one thing absolutely clear before we move forward. This preference is not fixed. It is not a verdict. It will shift and reverse and surprise you repeatedly as your daughter develops. There will be moments, frightening moments, painful moments, moments of deep overwhelm, where she will reach past everyone, including Dad, toward you, Mom. Because you are her safe base. You are where she goes when the world becomes too much. The preference for Dad is about who she runs toward when she wants to explore the world. The reach for Mom is about who she runs back to when the world has been too much of itself. She does not have a favorite. She has a need. And right now, that need points toward Dad. Now let's talk about baby boys. And I want to be careful here, genuinely careful, because this part of the science is sometimes taken out of context in ways that cause real harm. What I am about to describe is not evidence that boys are weak. It is not evidence that mothers are doing something wrong by being the person their sons need most. And it is absolutely not an argument for pulling back or toughening up a baby boy who cries for his mom. What it is a precise and honest account of what is happening inside a baby boy's nervous system. And once you understand it at that level, everything else makes sense. Research from Harvard's Center on the Developing Child, and since replicated across multiple institutions, has established that male infants show, on average, a higher and more prolonged cortisol response to stress than female infants of the same age. Cortisol is the body's primary stress hormone. When something frightening, overwhelming, unfamiliar, or uncomfortable happens, cortisol rises. And the process of bringing it back down, of returning the nervous system to a calm baseline, is called regulation. For adults, much of this happens internally. For infants, almost none of it does. Babies borrow regulation from their caregivers. They cannot do it alone. In baby girls, the regulation process, the cortisol coming down, the nervous system returning to calm, tends to happen more efficiently and more quickly. The system is more responsive, more flexible, faster to recover. In baby boys, the system is slower, more reactive. The cortisol rises higher. It stays elevated longer. And it is harder to bring back down without external help. What does external help look like for a baby? It looks like a specific, known, trusted caregiver. Their voice. Their smell. The warmth of their body. The particular rhythm of their breathing and their heartbeat. These are not just comforting sensory experiences. They are direct neurobiological inputs. They send a signal, through a cascade of neurochemical processes, directly to the baby's amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for threat detection, that says, "You are safe now. You can stand down." And research consistently shows that in the first year of life, this signal is most powerful, most immediate, and most effective when it comes from the primary attachment figure. In most families, that is the mother. A 2010 study published in the journal Developmental Psychology examined infant responses to parental separation across a large group of families where both parents were equally involved in daily caregiving. Both parents were present. Both were warm. Both had genuinely close relationships with their babies. And yet baby boys in this study showed significantly stronger protest behavior during maternal separation than baby girls did, even when the fathers were right there. Even when the fathers were doing everything right. The researchers were clear that this difference was not about relationship quality. It was not about who the baby loved more. It was about the neurobiological function that the mother specifically served in the baby boy's stress regulation system. The function was not interchangeable. Not because fathers were less capable, but because the baby's brain had, for reasons both evolutionary and developmental, assigned that particular regulatory role to a specific person. I want to stay with that for a moment. Because I think it is important to say directly, your baby boy is not choosing you, Mom, because he loves his dad less. He is not making a judgment about who is more competent or more present or more worthy of his attachment. He is following the path of least neurological resistance. He is going to the person who makes the inside of his body feel the safest, the fastest, with the least effort on his part. He needs you in the way he needs oxygen. Not because dad isn't there. But because you have become, inside his developing brain, his primary regulatory mechanism. You are, quite literally, his external nervous system. Now, before dads feel completely defeated by this, because I know some of you are listening to this section and recognizing that particular quiet feeling of being second, I need to tell you something that the research is equally clear about. Michael Lamb at Cambridge University, who has spent more time studying father-infant relationships than almost any researcher alive, found that fathers play a role in the development of baby boys that is not just equal to the maternal role, but distinctly irreplaceable in its own right. The physical play. The moderate challenge. The willingness to let the baby struggle a little before stepping in. The particular kind of confidence dad projects when he tosses the baby in the air and catches him, or sets him down on an unfamiliar surface and watches to see what he does. This is not negligence. According to Lamb's research, this is one of the primary mechanisms through which baby boys develop frustration tolerance, physical confidence, and the earliest foundations of emotional resilience. Mom gives him the safe base he returns to. Dad gives him the edge of the world he needs to practice being brave at. Neither of those functions works without the other. They are not competing. They are completing. I want to step back from the baby for a moment. Because this is a parenting channel, yes. But it is also a channel that believes a nurtured mother raises a nurtured child. And by extension, a supported, seen, connected couple raises a more securely attached baby than a disconnected one. So let's talk about what the parent preference dynamic actually does inside a relationship. Because it does something. Something real. Something that is rarely named out loud. It creates invisible scorekeeping. Mom counts the hours she was present and feels invisible when the baby reaches for dad. Dad counts the nappy changes and the early mornings and the bedtime battles and watches his son lunge toward the sound of Mom's key in the door, and wonders if any of it registered. Both parents love this baby with everything they have. Both are trying, genuinely trying. And both, in their quietest and most honest moments, feel quietly undervalued in a way they cannot fully explain. This low, persistent, largely unspoken feeling is one of the most common sources of tension in early parenthood. Not dramatic conflict. Not big arguments. Just a hum. A background frequency of not quite feeling enough. And what the science does, if we allow it to, is dissolve that hum completely. Because the science makes something clear that the human heart, caught up in the exhaustion and emotion of early parenting, cannot always see clearly on its own. Your baby is not keeping score. Your baby is not assigning worth to each parent based on effort or hours or sacrifice. Your baby's brain is doing something far more primal and practical than evaluation. It is sorting the world into functions. Into the person who helps me regulate when I cannot regulate myself, and the person who helps me grow when I am ready to be challenged. Into home and adventure. Into safe and exciting. And you, each of you, have been assigned to one of those roles not because your baby has judged you, but because your baby's developing brain needs specific things from specific people, and has recognized, at a neurological level, who can best provide each thing right now. John Gottman's longitudinal research on couples who navigate early parenthood well, who come through the baby years still connected, still a team, still genuinely liking each other, found one factor more predictive of that outcome than almost anything else. Couples who understood that their roles as parents were different, rather than competing. The parents who looked at the preference dynamic and said we each bring something the other can't, rather than who does the baby love more, those couples had stronger relationship satisfaction, more equitable caregiving, and children who showed stronger secure attachment to both parents independently. Your baby does not need two versions of the same parent. Your baby needs two distinct, irreplaceable, differently functioning people who know, in their bones, that they are on the same team. There is a version of this story that does not end well. And I think we should talk about it, plainly and without softening it, because understanding the stakes is part of understanding why all of this matters beyond the moment. When the parent on the not preferred side responds to the preference by gradually withdrawing, spending a little less time, engaging a little less enthusiastically, pulling back from a dynamic that feels like rejection, something important is lost. Something the research suggests cannot be fully recovered later. The Minnesota longitudinal study followed children from infancy all the way into adulthood. It is one of the most comprehensive studies of human development ever conducted. And what it found, regarding the parent preference and dual attachment question, was striking. Children who had strong, secure attachments to both parents in infancy were significantly more likely, as adults, to have stable romantic relationships. Stronger emotional regulation under pressure. Greater resilience in their careers. Lower rates of anxiety and clinical depression. Children who had strong attachment to only one parent, even when that attachment was genuinely warm, secure, and responsive, showed positive outcomes, yes. But meaningfully behind the dual attachment group in several key areas. The researchers concluded something important: the two parental attachments are not interchangeable. They serve different developmental functions. They build different capacities. And the absence of one, even when the other is strong, leaves a specific developmental gap. Not a catastrophic one, but a real one. And one that does not fully close as the child grows. What this means for the dad who is quietly considering pulling back because his baby girl seems indifferent to him during a difficult phase: keep showing up. The phase will shift. The development will move forward. And when it does, your consistent presence will be exactly what she needs, already waiting for her. What this means for the mom who feels like her baby boy doesn't really need her because he's laughing and playing happily with dad: he does need you. He will always need you. The security you build in him right now is the foundation upon which every future relationship in his life will stand. Daniel Siegel, clinical professor of psychiatry at UCLA, describes this as the architecture of felt security. Not security that comes from perfect attunement, because no parent ever achieves that. Security that comes from reliability. From the baby's accumulated experience of reaching and being met. Of needing and being answered. Every single time you show up, even when you feel like the second choice in that moment, even when the preference seems to point elsewhere, you are adding to that architecture. One brick at a time. Quietly. Invisibly. Permanently. So let's come back to where we started. The mom who gave her whole Sunday to her baby girl, and then watched her daughter's face transform the instant dad walked through the door. The dad who spent a full day caring for his baby boy, and then felt invisible the moment mom's voice came through the hallway. Those parents are not failing. Those parents are not less loved. Those parents are not losing something that matters. Those parents are watching developmental science happen in real time, in their own homes, in the most ordinary moments of the most ordinary days, and interpreting it through the wrong lens. Through the lens of competition, instead of the lens of collaboration. Through the lens of who does my baby prefer instead of what does my baby need, and am I the person who provides it? Here is the lens I want to leave you with today. Your baby girl who lights up for dad is not moving away from you, mom. She is practicing being brave, because you made her feel safe enough to do it. You are the reason she can leave. She is not choosing him instead of you. She is choosing adventure, because home, you, already exists and holds her. And your baby boy who reaches past everyone for mom is not dismissing you, dad. He is doing what his nervous system needs him to do to get through the hardest parts of this stage. And every time you show up anyway, every time you play, and wrestle, and make him laugh, and sit with him on the floor when you're exhausted and it would be easier not to, you are building something in him that will still be standing when he is 35 years old and navigating the hardest moments of his own life. You are not two parents competing for one baby's love. You are two completely different, completely necessary, completely irreplaceable people, collaborating on the development of a whole human being. And the preference, however it lands, however sharp it feels in the moment, is not the truth of what your baby thinks of you. It is simply where your baby's development is right now. On the long, winding, extraordinary road to becoming a full person. And you, both of you, each in your own irreplaceable way, are the road. If this gave you something today, if it changed how you see those moments, or gave you language for something you've been feeling but couldn't name, subscribe to Nurture Nest. Every single week we go exactly this deep. Into the research, into the real conversations, into the honest, science-backed, heartfelt content about raising children and taking care of yourself while you do it. And leave a comment below. Which way does the preference go in your house right now? And which parent does it hit hardest when it happens? Also tell me where you're watching from. I read every single one.